Well, good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim as we continue reading Flying Against Time, Chapter 16. There was something so terribly urgent in Ted Scott's cry, so fraught with danger and alarm, that it thrilled the bystanders. They did not know what it meant, but they did know that there could be no dallying. A dozen hands were applied to the plane, and it was trundled hurriedly out into the open. Simultaneously with his cry, Ted had started to climb up the side of the hangar. From beam to beam he made his way until he was within reach of the wicked-looking object. He clutched it and leapt to the floor. "Clear the track!" he yelled as he rushed out of the hangar. "Scatter!" Those in the vicinity almost fell over each other trying to get out of the way. Nearby was a deep pool of water used in washing the planes. Ted rushed to this and hurled his burden into the depths. An instant later there was a muffled roar, and a geyser of water shot up to a great height, drenching some of the startled group as it came down. "A bomb!" cried Mr. Hapworth in horror. "That's just what it was," declared Ted, all his nerves in a tingle at his narrow escape. "A time bomb, and just ready to go off. Another minute and it would have exploded in the hangar." "Horrible!" exclaimed Mr. Monet. "It might have killed any number of us." "Killed or maimed," agreed Ted. "Probably I was the special target aimed at, or the plane, or both." "What abominable miscreant could have done this thing?" exclaimed Walter Hapworth. Ted looked at his friend significantly. That look spoke volumes. You mean?" Walter began eagerly, but Ted held up his hand to suggest silence. "I have my suspicions," he said, "but I don't want to do anybody an injustice. It's a serious thing to mention names in the absence of any definite proof." If Ted Scott was cautious, Jackson had no objection to stating his belief. "It's them dirty rats, Craig and Duck Gale," he blazed out. "No one else in Bromville is capable of things like that, except their old man, and it's $1 to a plug nickel that it was the old scoundrel that put him up to it." "I'll bet Jackson's right," declared Mark Lawson. "But if it is so, how were they able to put the bomb up there without being seen?" asked Mr. Monet. "That's easy," replied Ted. "You remember what Bill was telling us about the rumpus last night? That rumpus was staged on purpose to draw Bill away from the hangar. In that 2 or 3 minutes, someone who was hanging around, probably back of the hangar, slipped in and put the bomb on the beam." "Gosh!" ejaculated Bill, chestfallen. "That must have been the way it happened, and I fell for it. I'm a bum watchman." "That's all right, Bill," said Ted. "Anyone might have fallen for it. One can't think of everything." "The police ought to be notified of this at once," declared Paul Monet. "Right you are," agreed Walter Hapworth, "and the first thing they ought to be asked to do should be to find out where Greg and Duck Gale were last night." "I doubt if that would get us anywhere," Ted said thoughtfully. "If they're really the ones who did it, they have their alibis fixed up all right. Easiest thing in the world. They go to bed at night, they ring for ice water, and some servant brings it to their rooms and sees they're in bed or undressed. At 3 o'clock in the morning they slip out unseen. A little later they get back unseen. They know the house like a book. In the morning they ring for something. A servant brings it and finds them in bed waiting for it. There you are. That servant, or those servants, if more than one, would swear that in all good faith they had seen them go to bed at night and get out of bed in the morning. The presumption would be strong that, in the absence of any proof to the contrary, they had been in the house all night. It's about as perfect as any alibi could be." "Yes," agreed Walter, "but who knows but what someone saw them in the street at night?" "Oh, it's possible, of course," admitted Ted, "but wholly unlikely. You know what Bromville is like at 3 o'clock in the morning, as quiet as a grave." "After all, we ought to put it into the hands of the authorities," persisted Walter. "What are the police for if not to run down the perpetrators of such a dastardly crime as this?" "I agree with Walter," said Paul Monet gravely. "It's a duty we owe society to see that these scoundrels are arrested and punished." "I think you're right," conceded Ted. "And I'm perfectly satisfied to have you, Paul, if you will, take it up with Dugan. Tell him all you know and what you suspect, and leave the rest to him. but I don't want it done until after I'm gone. If it came out now, it would throw a wet blanket over the big send-off that the townspeople are planning. Then, too, it might hold me up and make me stay here as a witness or something. By 12 o'clock, I'll be off for Boston. After that, I don't care what happens." "Let it go at that, then, for the present," agreed Mr. Monet. "I'll take the thing in hand after you've gone, and I'm going to press the matter with all the energy I have." A finer day for the start could not have been imagined. The sun shone brightly, and a brisk breeze tempered the heat. Long before 12 o'clock, the grounds of the plant were black with people, all anxious to show their idol what they thought of him, and to wish him good luck in the coming contest. A band played stirring airs, and when Ted Scott emerged from the works, arrayed in his flying togs, the clamor of applause that arose was deafening. People surged about him, anxious to touch his hand or pat him on the back, and it was all he could do to force his way through the throng to where the Comet stood awaiting him. Mr. Hapworth and Jackson were already in their places, and Ted, with a smile and a last wave of his hand, jumped into the cockpit and took his place at the controls. He gave the signal and the blocks were pulled away. The propeller whirred, the engine roared, and the Comet zoomed down the runway. Her load was light, as the present trip required but little gas, and she rose after the first 200 yards and soared into the skies. But Ted Scott did not at once turn her nose towards Boston. Those warm-hearted friends were going to get some return for the trouble they had taken in turning out. So for the next 10 minutes he sailed majestically around the grounds and then over the town, making a figure-8 directly over Bromville House. Then he came back to the grounds, made a final circuit, and was off, shooting into the air like a rocket to a height of 5,000 feet, and started out on his journey. The breeze was on their quarter and helped them along. The engines were working beautifully, and the Comet shot along at a speed that did not belie her name. "If you can only have weather like this on their trip to the coast," exclaimed Hapworth. "It would be all over but the shouting," replied Ted. 10 to 1, it will be blowing a tornado right in my teeth when the day comes to start." "At what time do you think we'll get to Boston?" asked Jackson. "Before midnight if everything goes well," returned Ted. "But the Boston airport is well lighted, and it will be as easy to land as in broad daylight." Toward dusk, Hapworth called Ted's attention to a big plane at the right. "Seems to be going in the same direction that we are," he remarked. "More like following us," judged Jackson. "I noticed it once or twice when we changed direction. It did the same a minute later." "Is that so?" asked Ted with interest. "I'll put it to the test." He swerved sharply to the right. A moment later the strange plane followed with the same maneuver. "Queer, isn't it?" remarked Hapworth. "Worse than queer, perhaps," replied Ted, a little uneasy. It was getting dark now, and in a few minutes they lost sight altogether of their uninvited traveling companion. "What in thunder do you think is the explanation of that fellow copying our motions?" asked Walter. "Don't ask me," replied Ted. "I guess anyway we've seen the last of—" "What's that?" The exclamation was evoked by a long trail of fire that streamed down in front of the plane. At first Ted thought it might be the light in the wake of a falling star, but that thought was dismissed when several other blazing streamers came down all over and around the plane. Then one of them landed on the wing, and he saw that it was a bunch of oil-soaked cotton waste. "By Jove!" he shouted. "They're trying to set the plane on fire!" And that's the end of Chapter 16. Next week we will continue with Chapter 17 and see if our hero and his companions make it to Boston, or if they go down in a blaze of glory. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.